Hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what I painted this month for September 2016, and as you can see, quite a lot by my standards, a lot of miniatures, less terrain than in the last couple of months. So obviously you can see at the front there quite a few Stormcast Eternal models, one Deadzone Plague model, and some more Deadzone terrain pieces, minor pieces, not the huge structures that you would have seen previously. So let's kick off by looking at the Deadzone stuff, shall we? So here we go, we've got some barricades, bridges, rubble, ends of pipes, generators, a pipe, and a large rusty conveyor belt. So they've been painted in pretty much the same manner as all the rest of my Deadzone terrain, although it is difficult to match the colour since I've been mixing it each time, and it always comes out slightly differently, but I don't think that's a huge deal since it ends up looking quite dirty anyway. So, for anyone who's not aware, primed black, airbrushed with the kind of greyish, slight hint of blue colour, heavily watered down black paint as a wash, most of that wiped away, and then dry brushing with a very light grey over the whole thing. Then when that's done, the old rust effects, which are done using the Games Workshop Citadel Technical Paints, Typhus Corrosion and Riser Rust. I haven't used any blood on any of these particular pieces. I think there's enough blood in my Deadzone setup right now. None of these pieces are really game changers, they're mostly just things to connect up other parts, and I've got an example picture here. So you can see some of the buildings that I made last time, connected up with one of the bridges and the pipe. That was the intention all along for that pipe, because in both of those buildings there is a length of pipe that ends there, so they were always meant to connect up. And then when I want the terrain arranged in a slightly different way, so they're not connecting up, then I've got those two ends that I can just stick on there, so it's not going to look silly. And some of the rubble inside the broken building there. So I'm quite satisfied with how my full Deadzone terrain layout is looking, and I'm looking forward to playing more games on it very soon. I've played one with most of the terrain done, but it is even more inhabited and there's even more cover now. So playing as the Plague as well, the more cover the better as far as I'm concerned. And speaking of the Plague, let's go on to this specialist with grenade launcher, shall we? So I found him in my bits box a while ago, probably got him from one of the Mantic Open Day bargain bins. And he was painted in the same way as all the other Plague. Airbrushed in yellow from the back, washed with a red glaze all over, dry brushed yellow on the back, and then dry brush all the skin in white. The coat is white, then Nuln Oil over that, and then a dry brush of white, with a bit of Typhus Corrosion splashed about on it. And the gun rust is done in the same way as the terrain rust, and there's some little blood spots in some of the little holes in his trousers, for example. You can see from the back here, what I've tried to go for is a very dirty kind of look, as if he's been sat on the edge of something with his coat dangling into some horrible, disgusting puddle. And then he's been called into action, he's stood up, and he's all covered in filth. I'm not sure if it looks a little bit too uniform. It's a bit of a straight line at the bottom there, but I'm fairly happy with it. So he's going to go straight into my Plague forces, and I think he's going to come in very handy. I've been looking at the rules for grenade launchers and they seem pretty tasty. So moving on to the Stormcast Eternals, and let's go straight to the juiciest part first, which is of course the dracoths. You will have seen the Lord Celestant on Dracoth that I painted last month. These of course are two concussors, and they were painted in very much the same manner. The Dracoth scales were of course done with a lot of dry brushing, starting with dark purple over black, then lighter purple, then white, which is quite a light dry brush at the end and only on the top. One difference between these guys and the Lord Celestin is that these have a lot more kind of scaly effect stuff on their clothing and on the armour. So what I've done for that, I've just dry brushed grey over those scaly parts. So not only does it catch the edges, it kind of colours that whole area quite grey apart from down in the crevices. So it brings out that scaly look. Side view of one of them here, you can see that effect on the shield there. I do very much like the scroll work still on all my Stormcast Eternals. I think that's one of the best looking parts. I toned down the horns a little bit compared to the Lord Celestant. I thought the transition from the light end of the horn to dark was a bit too stark. So for these guys I've made it a little bit more subtle so it doesn't get quite as dark at the base. Hopefully you can still see it though. On the other side of him you get a bit of a better look at the cloak, which is very simply done. Dry brushed over all the scaly cloak parts with just grey, and then grey and then lighter grey edge highlighting on all the raised lines and folds. On the box art, the dracoths are painted with the front armour plates all gold, but I thought mine have to have a bit more black on them than that. And here's the other one from the side. Very, very similar. The positions of the arms are a little bit different, of course, and the tails on each dracoth are a little bit varied. And there it is from the other side. I decided to go with the silver lightning bolts on the side armour instead of white, because it kind of matched up with all the other silver parts from the model, for example the end of the weapon. So there is less white on these models than there are on many of the other units I've done. And there's the pair of them from the back. I really like the way the scales look on the tail from this angle. Very, very tasty indeed, if I do say so myself. And I've got some more Stormcast, but I'm not going to spend too much time on these guys, these Retributors, because I've already painted 3 of these before. So now I've got 5, which is the amount that you're really supposed to have in a unit, but they only give you 3 in the starter box. So I just left out the Prime. Of course, using the starter models you don't get any of the weapon options, but I don't mind that too much. I found that 3 wasn't really enough in the game, so I'm looking forward to trying out 5 of them at once. The theme of the Retributors in my army, of course, being more black than many of the other units, for example on the shin and other leg plates. And there they are as a 5 with the 3 I'd already painted. Looking quite menacing, and I'm sure people will be trembling with fear at the thought of facing them on the table. Finally, for this month we have the Knight Heralder. Now when I was buying this guy, I had a choice of buying him or the one who's poking himself in the eye. So obviously I ended up going for this one, but it wasn't because of the pose particularly. I actually looked at the models up close, in person on the sprue, and I determined that this guy that I ended up going with was holding his horn slightly further down towards the fat end, which means that he's holding a slightly thicker part of the horn. So to my mind, that suggests that it's going to be more difficult to break off. Because if it's going to break anywhere, you would think it would break right under his hand there. And on the other model, that area is much thinner because he's holding the horn further towards the mouth end. So went with this guy in the end, and his pose looks cool anyway, holding his mighty sword aloft. The GW recommended art shows the kind of skirt bit in silver, but I thought, you know what, that might be a bit too much silver, so I just went with gold all over, apart from the shoulders of course, and the danglers on his back as well in black. I very much like how all these Stormcast Eternals have turned out. And there's the final angle, you can see a bit of the highlighting on his leg and his feet, one of the feet at least. So as we return to the original image, I'm very, very happy and satisfied with my progress this month. And as for October, well, what do I have planned? Well, while recording this, I already finished one model, which I'm not going to spoil, and I'm hoping to get at least a few more done this month. I'm not sure about terrain pieces, but I'm thinking if the weather is alright, then I may be able to get some of my castle finished, because I got fed up of waiting for the airbrush to miraculously heal itself and be able to spray primer effectively. So I bought an army painter spray can of primer. So if the weather's alright, I'm going to use that on the rest of the castle walls, and then it'll just be a matter of dry brushing those, so they shouldn't take too long at all. So hopefully I can get some of those done. And we shall see. Usually it depends what other game system I've recently played, because that inspires me to go and paint something for that particular system. I'll be playing the game and I'll be thinking, I've got that other model, I could have really done with that in this game, so I'll get that painted up for next time, and that's what drives me on. So because I've been playing with the undead in Kings of War tournaments quite a bit, you may well see some of those in the near future. Anyway folks, I think that's it for this month, so I'll catch you next time. Ta-ta!